Marine 2 has been out for just over a week now, I would reckon, and hopefully those of you who've managed to get your hands on a copy have been happily destroying the enemies of mankind. We've all seen the scene when the Dreadnought does the thing, but if you haven't, I definitely recommend you go out and check it out. But if you have been enjoying immersing yourselves in the world of the Adeptus Astartes, but have not perhaps got a grounding in the lore of the Space Marines, I have for you my top 10 Black Library Space Marine novels currently available so that you can dive in and really get to grips with some bolter and chainsword action. So, without further ado, let's get started. At number 10, I'm going in with Blades of Damocles. This is a kind of historical Warhammer novel. It's part of one of the last of what was called the Space Marine battle novels, during which we got to see the squad sergeant, Cato Sicarius, as he was before he became the noble captain of the Second Company, fight against the forces of the Tau in the Damocles Gulf. This is a book that tells the story from both angles, so you get both the Space Marines of the Ultramarines chapter and also the Fire Warriors and the different kind of enclaves of Commander Farsight and the Tau. I heartily recommend this if you want some hard-hitting Space Marine Xenos-crushing action, and also, like I said, it's just a really good book and it kind of initially immerse yourself in the 40k lore. You don't have to have too much of a grounding in the 40k background to really enjoy this one. Number 9, then, another Space Marines battles novel, Death of Integrity. This is one of my favourite of the Space Marine battles novels, and frankly, I probably should have put it higher, but it is somewhat limited in terms of the story that it tells. That's not to say it's not a great book. This story tells the point of view of two different Space Marine chapters, an Ultramarine successor chapter, namely the Nova Marines, my personal chapter that I collect on the tabletop, and a Blood Angels successor chapter as well, the Blood Drinkers chapter. These two chapters come together to purge a Space Hulk, the appropriately named Death of Integrity. This novel is gripping with some absolutely stonking Xenos-smashing action, and you get the Space Marines get stuck in killing gene stealers, and there's a dark secret at the heart of the Hulk and at the heart of this novel. Let's move on. Number 8, Space Wolf, or as I've called it in many previous videos, Ragnar Blackmane Goes to Hogwarts. This was one of the first Black Library novels that was published when the Black Library imprint first came out. It's written by William King, who wrote all of the kind of early Gotrek and Felix novels, and it is a cracking Space Wolf novel. Long before they started riding around on Thunderwolves or the Wolfen Came Back or any of that stuff, the story of a young warrior from one of the tribes of Fenris who is collected by the Collectors of the Fallen and taken to the mighty Fang, the spire of rock at the centre of the planet Fenris, which ascends even out beyond the realms of the atmosphere, there to be inducted into the ranks of the Space Wolves chapter. There is genuinely, I kid you not, it does read at times a little bit like kind of a Harry Potter novel, where Ragnar's learning about all these strange and amazing magical seeming technologies that he had never had experience of before. But it is a cracking read, and if you enjoy it, William King wrote a few more kind of Ragnar Blackmane novels that are well worth a read as well. Let's move on to number 7, Spears of the Emperor. I had to get an Aaron Dembski Bowden novel in here because he is a brilliant writer. I could have just gone straight in with the Night Lords trilogy, but that really genuinely is more of a Chaos Space Marine novel trilogy than it is a Space Marine novel trilogy. This is his invented chapter, the Spears of the Emperor. It's a story set in the current timeline. So in particular, if you're interested in terms of knowing about things like the Primaris Marines, the kind of Great Rift that splits the galaxy at the moment, and all of that kind of current lore, this takes that story up absolutely and kind of follows one of the chapters of the Space Marines in the kind of Imperium Nihilus, the dark side of the Imperium beyond the Rift, as they receive their first reinforcements from the Primaris Space Marines. It's a brilliant book. Number 6, Blood Angels, Red Fury. Now, okay, this is the third book in the Blood Angels series. It was 4 books that were written by James Swallow. They're all really good. I've picked this one in particular just for one major reason. The first 2 deal with this kind of whole Blood Angel heresy, where there is a suggestion of perhaps the return of their Primarch Sanguinius and shenanigans ensue. This one picks up after the aftermath of that, and the reason I love it is it features representatives from most, if not all, of the Blood Angel successor chapters. So you get Gabriel Seth, you get one of the chapter masters who is a dreadnought. There's a load of cool kind of Space Marine lore jammed into this novel as they all kind of come together for a great conclave to decide whether or not it is worth saving the Blood Angels chapter from genetic extinction, and then have to take on a range of kind of different enemies that Chaos pitch against them. Definitely worth a read, and if you enjoy this one, then you can go back and read the first two. They won't overly be spoiled for you, I would suggest, by reading this one first. Number 5, then, Angels of Darkness, a Gav Thorpe novel. Gav Thorpe is a bit of a dividing figure sometimes in the lore. Some people really like what he's kind of contributed to the Warhammer lore. Other people have differing views on that. I really enjoy this book. I'm going to say that. Gav Thorpe knows how to write Dark Angels. And this is a great kind of novel all about the secrecy and the secret wars that the Dark Angels fight in their quest to apprehend the fallen Space Marines of their chapter, and in particular the arch traitor Cypher. I will say no more. It's all very shh, hush, hush. Let's move into the top 4 then. Number 4, this is Carcharodons, The Outer Dark. This is one of 2 novels that were written by Robbie McNiven, and Black Library, seriously, give this man more Carcharodons novels. I know he's got a great book out now at the moment with the Exorcist chapter in, with their whole kind of Mark Phobos Armor style 10th Company, which is really cool. I'm enjoying that at the moment as I'm working my way through it. But the Carcharodons are some of my favourite Space Marines. Okay, I say this because one of my favourite movies is Jaws, but Space Marines that are like operating like giant sharks, basically, like roaming through the outer dark of space, surfacing to devour the enemies of mankind in a blood-rending sort of shower of carnage before disappearing back into the dark and the depths again. I'm not going to say more than that, except that they fight against the Night Lords, who are absolutely the best enemy that they could possibly face. It really does kind of form a counterpoint of these two kind of blood-drenched Space Marine chapters, or legions in the case of the Dark Angels, the Night Lords. I will say no more. Let's move on now to number 3, Storm of Iron. I can't believe it's taken us until this far in to get to a Graham McNeill novel. Graham McNeill is one of the premier writers when it comes to writing Space Marines. He's generally just an awesome Black Library writer, and I think I've yet to pick up one of his books that I haven't enjoyed in some way. I know I said that the Night Lords books were more Chaos books, and now here I am suggesting a Chaos Space Marine book. Storm of Iron, of course, is about the Iron Warriors Legion, but crucially, about half of this book, I would say, is dedicated also to the Imperial Fists, their arch rivals and nemesis since the days of the Horus Heresy. And you might wonder why I've not mentioned a Horus Heresy book in this series yet. And I think it's because the Horus Heresy is a very different portrayal of Space Marines compared to how they are in the current timeline. They are, anyone who perhaps has come to this video looking for something to recommend to them after playing the Space Marine 2 game, if they read the Horus Heresy novels, they might find those a little bit confusing. Storm of Iron, then, is picking up almost where the Heresy left off. These are the Iron Warriors, some of them we see in the Horus Heresy novels, now in the 41st millennium, enemies of mankind, absolutely determined to destroy a massive fortress near the Eye of Terror, and standing in their way an entire company of Imperial Fist Space Marines, backed by rank upon rank of Imperial Guard. It is a battle of, absolutely massive proportions. I cannot recommend this book enough. It's already been picked out in the past by Black Library as one of their kind of best novels that they ever published, and I understand why that is, because it is so good to read. Let's move on now to number 2, Dark Creed. Again, Ben, why are you suggesting Chaos Space Marine books? Well, the reason again here is that it's the way in which the Chaos Space Marines act as kind of a foil to the Space Marines in this. This Dark Creed is the 3rd and final of the Anthony Reynolds Word Bearers trilogy. And again, you might feel, why am I reading book 3 before I read books 1 and 2? Don't think of it as a Word Bearers novel. Think of it instead as a novel about a battle against an entire Space Marine chapter. Huge elements of the Word Bearers Legion lay siege to the White Consuls chapter. The White Consuls are one of my favourite chapters. I've covered them previously in one of my Ultramarine successor videos. The White Consuls are unique insofar as they have 2 chapter masters. This book reeks of kind of Space Marine lore. It is, absolutely packing in the way in which the White Consuls approach things. I've talked about them at length in my Ultramarines video, but this is where you get that lore from, and this is where you can really kind of get to grips with a chapter who perhaps, alongside the Salamanders, I can think of as the only other chapter really, who genuinely cares for the greater mass of humanity, who wants nothing more to them to be kind of the leaders and to be an inspiration to humanity as a whole. This is a brilliant book. It is my favourite of the Word Bearers trilogy, and that is why I'm recommending it here. I recommended it also in my 1040k videos for beginners video, because it is that good. Let's move on then to number 1, the top spot. What Space Marine novel could I possibly recommend as being the top Space Marine novel to read if you read no other Space Marine novels? Well, it's this. It's Nightbringer. How could it not be Nightbringer? Again, we revisit Graham McNeill here, and actually the Nightbringer novel would eventually tie into kind of the events that took place in Storm of Iron, and they kind of weave them together into this kind of dueling narrative between the protagonists of each of the novel series. Nightbringer is the Ultramarines novel. I know they've featured in other novels, and in fact, you know, there at Primark, Reboot Gulliman's had a whole bunch of novels, but for me, this is the Ultramarines novel. This follows, of course, Captain Uriel Ventress of the 4th Company of the Ultramarines as he unravels kind of a Xenos plot and eventually has to confront a living star god. It is a stonker. Again, it's one of the earliest kind of Black Library novels that was released of the current run of what is now Black Library, as opposed to the earlier kind of 40k and Warhammer novels that were released in the late 80s and early 90s. This is, if you want any other novel to read, I think, after having played Space Marine 2, go away and read this. If you haven't read it and you haven't played Space Marine 2, go away and read this. It is a brilliant book, and I love it to bits. There is also a Uriel Ventress miniature out there, so if you're kind of dipping your toe into the miniatures world, then that is also something you can do if you want to kind of try that out, or, you know, perhaps someone to lead Captain Titus into battle. That is also an option. I don't know what else I can say about that. I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed my rundown. If there are any novels you think I've missed, let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I will catch you next time. Bye for now.